In this video, we will do a quick revision of aggregate demand and its components. As we all know, aggregate demand is equal to C plus I plus G plus X minus M, that is the net exports. Remember, consumption, investment, government spending, and the net exports, these are all injections and equal to the aggregate demand. What I'll share with you is also a quick technique of writing a good essay if at all a question comes on any one of the components of aggregate demand and to be explaining in detail. So, first of all, what is consumption? Always think of what the definition would be like. So, what is consumption? Consumption is the total spending of the households on the goods and services. The equation for the consumption, if you can remember, it is C equals to A plus BY. What is this B for? MPC. That is the marginal propensity to consume. A is the autonomous consumption and this is the induced consumption. That is the BY is the induced consumption. A is the autonomous consumption. What are the determinants of consumption now? What are the factors that affect consumption? Of course, if you're doing an essay, it is always good to have more of diagrams. So you could very well incorporate a quick diagram on consumption as in here. And this is expenditure and Y. That's how it is. This is the autonomous component and that is the consumption line. So the determinants of consumption are the very first one, disposable income. You can think of some more. Disposable income, possibly the interest rate, the household wealth, or the consumer confidence, or inflation. These are a couple of factors that affect consumption. A quick and an easy way again of remembering the basic relationship of all these variables. The very first one, what is disposable income, is Y minus T. And the relation between the consumption and the YD is positive. Positive basically means that if the disposable income increases, the consumption increases. Simply for the pure fact that the consumers have more money at their disposal or in terms of the purchasing power, and thus they can buy more goods and services. The interest rate has got a negative relation with the consumption. So higher the interest rate, the cost of borrowing will increase and thus the consumption would decrease. So let's say if a question is on all the favorable changes of consumption, or alternatively if it is unfavorable changes of consumption. So favorable is positive, that should talk about what are the factors or what ways all these will increase the consumption. On the other side, if it is unfavorable, you would talk about how all these factors would decrease consumption. So negative is just an opposite sign here. It is simply meaning interest rate goes up, consumption goes down. Interest rate goes down, consumption goes up. Why? Simply because the cost of borrowing changes. This is how you can make an explanation. Household wealth, if naturally people are rich, if they have got more income at disposal, they are likely to spend more. And thus they'll be more confident in terms of the expenditure and thus increase on their expenditure. So this is a positive relation. If the household wealth is less, goes without saying, they'll be spending lesser. Consumer confidence. What is consumer confidence? Based on the economic scenario, if the economy is in boom, definitely consumers can be more sure of their future incomes, and thus, and more so, it is possible when there is a boom, their income levels are going up, and thus with that consumer confidence going up, the consumers are likely to spend more. Inflation definitely relates to the price level, and thus you have done it in microeconomics. If the price goes up, what happens to the demand? It goes down. In other words, the consumption goes down. So it is a negative relation. Now again, looking at it, there are only two things that we are talking of in a negative relation: interest rate and inflation. So a very quick explanation of these with the causation chains is likely to be and should be actually included in your answer if at all a question comes on any one of the determinants, say consumption. Similarly, if it comes on investment. Now, it is a very, very simple technique of memorizing or learning more concepts at a go. Try and find out what could be used commonly so that you can address consumption or investment if the need be. So one of the common ones is interest rate, right? So how is the investment related to interest rate? The storyline is pretty much the same again. Because if the interest rate goes down, the cost of borrowing becomes lesser, the profitability for the businesses go up, and thus the business would invest more. Similarly, you can think of consumer confidence, but instead we don't call it consumer confidence because investment relates to the firms. So you can remember the idea of business confidence. So how does the business confidence affect the investment? Same relation and the same storyline again. Positive. If the businesses are more confident just because the economy is booming, they are likely to associate better returns, and thus they are likely to spend more, and more so if the economy is booming. Remember the fact, if the economy is booming, there is more demand. Aggregate demand can be increasing, and thus the producers will need to produce more, and thus again they would tend to associate a greater deal of confidence in the future investments. Another one you can think of, of course not inflation, but the third one is a bit close to the business confidence idea, that is called expected rate of return. How does the expected rate of return affect? Again, the same relation, positive. Higher the expected rate of return, the more profits you associate with your investments, the more you are interested in investing. But of course, you must not fail to mention the definition of expected rate of return, or the formula, that is how the additional cost and what is the expected profit out of it should be calculated in. Alongside, you can even mention, if at all, technology. Remember, whatever we are talking of here, it's pretty much the idea of what will save the businesses in terms of the cost, or what will increase their profits. So technology, it has a positive relation with aggregate supply, right? So on the similar lines, you can say that if the technology is better, innovative,